Greetings and peace to you all. My name is Umi. Thank you guys for joining me and my cat Nilo for a video. Nilo! So today, Scorpio, let's talk about it. We're going to talk about your sexual health. We're going to talk about some of your challenges and strengths when it comes to your sexuality. And this is not an extensive video on the subject, so depending on the response, we may talk a little bit more about sex and these things. Some of the things we're going to talk about are sexual magnetism, promiscuity. I wrote down sexual abuse and fixations. We're going to talk about special care for the sexual organs, transformation through sex, processing guilt and shame, as well as surrender, as sex has been known to be somewhat of a mini death. So if you are a Scorpio sun, moon, or rising, or you have Venus in Scorpio, or you're just your chart, there's a lot of Pluto aspects, you may find this content useful. Why sex? As many of you know, Scorpio is the most sexual sign. There's often some aura of sex or sexual magnetism, or there's something about Scorpio that kind of exudes sexuality. And for some people, that's really cool. They even envy the thought of, sexual magnetism. But for Scorpios, you may have found it to be very, very, very challenging in life, especially in your youth, your early years, when your understanding of your sexuality and just sex in general is very limited. So I will say, Scorpio, that many of you, unlike any other sign, can have the most discipline when it comes to your sexuality. You don't just sleep around with anybody. You understand the value in powerful, deep sexual transformation. And so it's just not in you to just sleep around with every random person. That's some of you. For those of you who are not, motivated by just experimentation, then you likely aren't suffering as much in the area of guilt or shame, or even sexual organs, susceptibility to STDs and these things. Magnetism, again, when we're young, we tend to attract people, and sometimes even adults, who can touch or bother us because they're themselves not even sure, maybe it's an unconscious thing, are drawn to your energy, or drawn to you. And so that can create, these very unfortunate situations where people suffer sexual abuse, children suffer sexual abuse. Perhaps they're exposed to sex prematurely, seeing something they shouldn't be seeing, getting in a hold of content such as pornography too early, or having a neighbor or cousin or friend or something fondle them. This is a part of Scorpio's challenges and issues when it comes to sex, is because that sexual magnetism can mean that whether you want it or not, people just seem to be attracted or drawn to you. As you become adult, it may be something that you invite. Some people may love the fact that they're very sexually magnetic. They can even use this as a tactic for manipulation and control and dominance. But that's, obviously going to come back to bite us. So we have to be mindful about how we wield this sexual energy and sexual magnetism. Perhaps your attraction comes from having penetrating eyes, or your conversation or aura, or something within the physical that attracts people. But aside from that, the mystique and the allure that comes with most Scorpios is that people can be attracted to you even if you're not the most physically attractive person. There's just something about you that is quite magnetic. So you have to determine how it is you are working with your sexual magnetism. How do you utilize it? Is it something that's been exploited? You kind of find that you're being exploited because of this sexual energy, which takes me to the next point of promiscuity, being promiscuous, hoeing around, sleeping around a lot for the sake of the sexual experimentation, or just simply not knowing that you're predisposed to be hypersexual. Yes, you are, because a part of you identifies with another soul, even on an emotional level, through sex. So it's not so much about cuddling and conversation for Scorpios. They want to get to the root of a person. They want to get to a person's soul. And for Scorpio, that's going to come through one of many things that would be sex, through sexual experience. They feel they can really experience a person's energy and intensity and just rawness, that real, raw, uncut, vulnerable exchange of energy is what Scorpio desires, not this performance, superficial stuff. They want to really engage with a person soul to soul and get that relief and healing through sex. So unfortunately, if you're not aware of just how much that desire, how strong that desire can be, there can be a lot of partners searching and seeking and wanting to test and try out and look for that perfect partner. Means that we're becoming promiscuous. We're just out here enjoying our sexual energy and exploiting it even. So I'm not saying that to judge anyone. I know we've all had moments as adults or young adults where, you know, we're not living our best life, but we're simply just kind of living according to our desires and our wishes and our wants. So be mindful of your nature, your promiscuous nature. If that's something that seems to be a challenge or issue for you right now, it's important you identify it. Am I really interested in the people, the partners I've been choosing? How do I feel afterward? Is this some act of, rebellion or frustration or what have you? Really pinpoint the why behind your sexual encounters. Something else to consider here is sexual abuse and fixations. This does come with the sign of Scorpio. Sexual fixations means that you can find yourself constantly thinking about, fantasizing, fixating on sex, whether it's you and another person, you meeting people and you imagining them with their partner. Yes, this is something that does happen with Scorpio, is that you imagine how other people engage and how their connection was formed through sex. You imagine that with yourself and maybe someone that you're interested in. And it could be a theme in your mind where you're constantly thinking and fantasizing, as I mentioned, and just sort of projecting even these desires. So this can be potentially dangerous when we have these fixations, because we can obsess over a person and we can give a lot of, this is almost a form of magic. You have to keep in mind, Scorpio, you're the alchemist. And if you're not aware of your own magic and your own magnetism, then you could be performing this magic on people and not even realizing that you're, manipulating in some way unconsciously. You're using your own thoughts and desires to attract and manifest what you want. Sometimes it is not at another person's free will. You're kind of infringing on them with your sexual prowess and your ability to get what you want. So just be mindful of that. So obviously with sexual abuse, this is a whole nother level and likely a whole nother video. So I'm just gonna touch briefly on it here. When it comes to sexual abuse, we can have experienced it, and so therefore we find that we are abusing others. It could also be as a reflection of certain very challenging aspects within the natal chart. So sometimes Pluto and Mars or Pluto and Saturn can make a very abusive nature in a person if it's a square opposition, like certain hard aspects where abuse is just our form of coping. It's a coping mechanism, and it's important you address any forms of sexual abuse, whether it's you yourself projecting or carrying out some aggressive or some type of sexual behavior that infringes on the free will of another person. Right. If you are someone who is dealing with sexual abuse in your life, it's important that you get the necessary help, you talk to someone, or you find ways to get out of an environment that is utterly destroying you on a level that is the most intimate parts to who we are, our sexuality. We're going to talk about special care for these sexual organs. Dear Scorpio, you are susceptible to STDs, you are susceptible to issues with the reproductive organs. So you will find that having cysts or fibroids or issues with the sexual organs really affects your sense of security and well-being. It affects your relationship with your partners, and also you don't feel as empowered when you're suffering with things like STDs and other issues with your reproductive organs. So you have to take special care of yourself and your body, limit the amount of people that you are intimate with. But when you're with someone that you just met and then 2 nights later another person, and you're really making yourself, putting yourself out there to be wounded both emotionally and physically. When we're talking about transformation through sex, this is powerful. This is what you're known for. And of course, it's not limited to Scorpio, but when we're talking about Scorpio's ability to transform themselves and to transform other people through deep and passionate and soul-shaking sexual intimacy, it is a very powerful thing. And it's something that you shouldn't take lightly in terms of what it is you're able and what it is you're capable of doing in terms of healing another person and healing yourself. You can have transformation through sex because it requires an utter surrender, a letting go, allowing yourself to be loved, to be healed, to be welcomed into the aura and space of another soul. And the two of you, in entering that intimate connection, when you're having sex together, you already know when you came into the union that this is what your intentions are. We're going to heal each other. It could even be your physical organs. I have a video talking about mastering the libido, where I address some things that you can do to heal the body through sex. Some things you can do to heal the body through masturbation. So that's something. If that's something that interests you, again, we may expound on this conversation in another video. We're going to talk about processing guilt and shame briefly. Yes, sex, it comes with the territory. Sometimes people are in committed relationships or they're married and they deal with guilt or shame when it comes to intimacy and sex. This goes back to our youth. It goes back to some conditioning we were introduced early on. Maybe there are certain traditional views your parents introduced you that made you feel absolutely ashamed about being sexy or having sex, whether you're in a relationship or not. You just felt it was so taboo. You know, you heard all this stuff about fornication and adultery and just, you know, the badness of sex and sexuality. So therefore, as an adult, you can even still have some reservations and inhibitions about how it is that you express your sexuality. So that's something you're going to have to overcome. You're going to have to acknowledge as just, you know, a part of your early years that was intended to safeguard you, maybe from being out there hoeing around town. The fear you had about your parents' disapproval or God's disapproval may have safeguarded you. But then as an adult, you kind of have some challenges letting your guards down, finding sex as pleasurable and enjoyable and okay to enjoy. That's something that you're going to have to address with your partner. The guilt can also come from having been sexually abused and you feel that you were the reason, you were the cause, you know, your sexiness that led to you being abused that's not true. That's an absolute misconception when we think that a person who's been violated or victimized through sexual abuse, that somehow it's their fault. Society has even convinced us of this at times, but no person deserves to be abused or taken advantage of when it comes to their bodies, you know, or mind or body. So addressing abuse issues that maybe happened at some point in your life, whether you're a man or a woman, men do get raped, men do get abused. So it's important that regardless, whatever the situation was, whenever it happened, that you address it. That way you can once again, Scorpio, go back to the healing power of sex and the transformation that it brings. So many of you have heard, who's flushing the toilet? I'm trying to do a video. So many of you have heard sex referenced to a mini death because of the surrender required when we are letting go. You know, you have to let go and surrender in order to really kind of level up when it comes to your sexual experience. We can't be rigid and overthinking and afraid and all this other stuff while we're being intimate with someone. It's absolutely about letting go, embracing their energy, having that soul to soul connection. And so this can be intimidating. This can be somewhat of a science that requires your conscious awareness of how you feel and how you're able to let go, mentally and to welcome in healing and transformation. So it's something that requires a little bit of inner work, not a little bit. It requires a lot of inner work. It requires inner work in the sense that our emotional body, you know, what state is that in? Are we an emotional wreck inside? Are we wounded and damaged and we have all this past and garbage that we're holding on to, and then we expect to have this, you know, beautiful and tranquil and harmonious sexual experience? Sometimes letting go, all of that baggage and trauma and everything you're holding on to can come out and can be released through our sexual experience, but your partner has to be well aware of what's going on. Sexual healing is a process. It's absolutely something that you want to talk to your partner about and see how can we make this alchemical experience of a soul-to-soul connection through intimacy a way to heal the body, heal the mind, heal our emotions. So I wanted to share that, just some information on sexual health. Again, if you guys find this topic interesting and you'd like to delve more into it, maybe you will or won't leave it in the comments, but I don't know, shoot me an email, let me know if this is something that you personally would like to address within your life so that you can kind of overcome some boundaries, some blockages or limitations. So yeah, and speaking of boundaries, maybe that's why that word slipped out. It's important that you set boundaries when it comes to your sexual practices, your sexual partners. Make sure you set boundaries. And I said practices because we're not always with a partner. If you're someone who uses toys, or you're someone who practices masturbation, we can even abuse this. We can even indulge in this too much. Again, I think I have a video talking about masturbation. So that's important. We don't want to become hypersexualized and exploit and abuse the very powerful and beautiful sexual energy that is associated with Scorpio. One important takeaway from this video, Scorpio, I hope, is that you keep in mind that sex is sacred. You are valuable, you are worthy, and you have to keep in mind who you are and your intentions when you set out to be intimate with another person. And so some soul searching, some intuitive listening can help you to really identify your intention and your strengths and weaknesses, not just about sex, but that is one of those things that we tend to kind of overlook, or we don't want to delve too deep in that because it seems to be such a taboo thing, even on a personal level. But it's important you examine yourself and examine your sexuality, what interests you, what arouses you, what is it that you hope to get in your unions and intimacy with another person? These are critical questions to ask, especially as we become adults. So I hope you guys found this information useful. Thank you for tuning in. I am available for sessions, and that information is in the description. And until next time, peace.